Thank you so much, Nilima ma'am, for being here. This is our first episode of Voices of India, so we're really excited to have you, to talk to you, learn from you, and then get inspired on the way.
Lovely. Thank you, Simu. Thank you for having me here on your show.
So, talking about inspiration, your mother Dinesh Nandini ji has been a prolific writer with what 40 books to her credit.
Yes.
So, how has her writing, her style influenced yours?
In many ways, actually, I can say now that in retrospect. For a start, I never wanted to be a writer. And I never ever imagined that I would be a writer. We kind of grew up in an atmosphere of literature and creativity and everything, fine arts and everything. And she always emphasized that I should write. So clearly, she saw the writer in me before I saw it in myself. And her ability to write, I inherited in full measure. Although she used to write in Hindi, and I wrote all my books in English. But yes, I think I'm deeply grateful to her for having given me that by just sheer osmosis and my birth, that I inherited her ability to write. And as far as the style of writing, my mother wrote very colorful kind of earlier writings were very romantic, very colorful about Radha, Meera, about separation, about man-woman relationships, and then later on she progressed to dark kind of writing when she wrote three novels on her own life, which was a life full of struggle and torment with my father. And after my father passed away, then she wrote a lot about death. So there was a very intriguing kind of relationship in her writings between romance and death. So it was almost like she romanticized dying. She feared it, she romanticized it. And it was, in fact, I think I am also very deeply impacted by it because death and dying fascinate me as well. And I don't know if you've read my book. Death plays a very prominent role in all my scripts and narrative. Yeah, so she has deeply influenced
Yeah.
my writing.
Did you sort of try to compare the kind of character that she portrayed your father to be and compared it with yours? Were there
I got a
similarities?
lot of inputs from my mother because my father had a whole life lived before I was born. He was 57 when I was born, and he had a whole life lived before my mother came into his life.
Yeah.
So he had been married like five times before her. She was his sixth wife, and I was the fourth child of their marriage. So when I started writing about my father, I took a lot of inputs from her. I don't know if I compared, but I think we pretty much collated, we pretty much created the same character in pretty much the same ways because her character, except for the fact that I was writing about my father with a great deal of candor, because for me it was like exercising all the phantoms from inside me, which I realized later. I didn't even know it was going to be like that. For her, it was one long narrative of anguish because my life, although my life was also a struggle with this dysfunctional home and family, but hers was just purely, simply anguish and torment. It was a struggle for her to match up with him, and I think every day of her life, I can't remember my mother ever being happy. So that was a slight variation. Otherwise, we were both writing about the same character, me as the daughter and she as the wife. So other than that, we created pretty much the same,
Similar
same,
characters.
yes, the same template. Yeah.
What was that process like of you, deciding to write the book that you wrote, your first one, Father Dearest, sort of documenting your father's life in both its positives and negatives? What was that decision making process like?
You
for
mean why I chose to write
why
it?
you chose that? Had you always thought that you wanted to write this book?
No.
What prompted you?
No, no. And this answer changes as I get into become another person with each book. And what I feel now, the answer to this question, which is always posed to me, is that what was the process like? I have actually begun to believe, and in fact, I'm convinced that I don't choose my characters, my characters choose me. And we are 18 siblings. Anyone could have written this book, and we have some prolific writers in the family, my own siblings, established writers, award winners, some really, really exceptional people. Why did I only write the book? Although I don't know, maybe I was his favorite child in a very quirky kind
Yeah.
of way. But I really believe that I was chosen to write the book. A lot of it has to do with the kind of relationship I had with him, which was deeply loving and loathing. And also to do with the fact, I think I'm different from all my other siblings.
Yeah.
I'm not using the word better, as you see, but different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, two of your novels, Father Dearest and The Secret Diary of Kasturba, they're largely biographical accounts of two people who have existed. Yet one is a biography, Father Dearest, and the other one you say is a fictionalized account. Why did you choose to write them such, and how was the process different of research, of writing, and what were sort of the liberties that fiction allowed you that maybe writing a biography didn't?
My father's story is my story. I did not want to fictionalize it. I wanted to say it like it was, like how I lived the life with my father. And I remember somebody telling me that it was one of the journalists who reviewed my book, the first review which came out at that time, and it was very prestigious because it was Indian Express. And I'm talking now of the early 2000s. And she wrote that if this were fiction, it would be too bizarre to be believable. And she also said that she's got the mix right. She's got all the cocktail that is should go into a pot boiler or a bestseller. And my answer to that was that I did not create this. I lived this life. It may appear bizarre to you, but for us it was day to day living. This was how I lived. This was the home I lived in. Yes, we had 18 siblings, not in the same house. Yes, I had to contend with four stepmothers. Two had died before I was born. And yes, it may seem odd and quirky and alternate to you, but this was the life we lived. So I did not have to create that pot boiler cocktail. It was already there.
Yeah.
So that and my the soul of my writing is candor. I cannot pretend to be what I am, and I cannot, for the life of me, hold back what I want to say. It may be brutal for some, and some people did say it when my first book came, that you have brutalized the senses of society by being so candid about your father. You know, you have committed three cardinal sins, you're the daughter, you're an Indian, and you cannot do that. You've divulged family secrets. It's treachery. You can't do that. And I said, it's my story. I have the right to say it the way I want to say it. I said, you are 18 of you. You say your own story if you think mine is fictional or it's distorted or it's skewed. So that was my story. It took no effort for me to write it. Coming to Kasturba, I have to admit that I did not want to do this story again. Um, Kasturba came to me as an inspiration, and I truly believe that Kasturba wanted me to become her voice and write the story. Because when the thought of Kasturba, after having written Father Dearest and Merchants of Death, which were like these absolutely rabble rousing kind of brutalizing, earth shattering kind of books, uh, I thought it would be so pale in comparison. Because Suba's life is so staid. She's such a nondescript kind of woman, and who's going to read Kasturba? It's not my pen, and it's not my voice. Till I started reading about Kasturba, I was astounded to find that what we know about Kasturba is so contrary to what actually she was. And the more I read about her, and the more I tuned into her soul, so to speak, uh, I speak a language which some people might find like odd, like she's schizophrenic. She talks about tuning into souls and all of that. But anyway, I really feel that that was an energy that was channelized through me. I was compelled to become her voice and to write her story. So it became biofiction because, for a start, the title itself is fictional. There was no diary Kasturba ever kept. Kasturba was pretty much illiterate till she died. Uh, if she had a diary, it would have been in her mind. And I think that's where I found my pages.
Yeah. And I feel like also with biographies, they sort of extend this stamp of veracity, you
Yeah.
know. So there cannot be something that you're writing, even if it's bizarre, it is true, and people, believe that. With fiction, I guess it allows that distance for you to interpret and figure out how you want this character to be shaped.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to add something to this is that I am not a writer of fiction. Fiction doesn't come naturally to me. I'm a people watcher, and I've been often tagged as a agent provocateur. That I only write things to provoke emotions, and maybe at some point that may be true because there is a kind of quality to my writing which can offend and which I'm kind of unmindful about. So when I was writing Kasturba's story, I realized that I'm dealing with a subject which is a little sensitive. She is the wife of Mahatma Gandhi,
Father of the nation.
and all of that, and plus there exists a very prominent historical canvas which I cannot violate. If I'm writing about Kasturba, I have to stick to those historical details. But what I also found, and which is my pretty much my forte, if I dare say, is that being a psychologist, I feel that you can question me on facts, on dates, on details, on inaccuracies in history, but nobody can question me on my interpretations. That's my choice. So if I feel that, like even by researching, I mean, the way I wanted to present the book was that I follow the path, the historical canvas of Gandhi's life, and Gandhi's uh, every breath that he took from the moment he was born till the day he died is recorded in some document, some biography, some historical tale, in history, in everything. So here was this character who was a three-dimensional, four-dimensional reflection of what was happening in those days. And she was with him in every single frame of his life. So let me give you an example. For instance, that when Gandhiji tells Kasturba in South Africa that he has decided to take a vow of celibacy. So that has been recorded in lurid detail and everything, all the interpretations, the actual event, the taking up of the vow. And nobody has ever recorded what was Kasturba's reaction. And I cannot for the life of me, having read about Kasturba's childhood and the kind of feisty and the kind of rebellious and the kind of supremely confident girl that she was, that she just took it quietly lying down. So I have created a character. In fact, I have written a scene or two chapters there on Kasturba's reaction to Gandhiji's telling them that they're going to be celibate. So my sensibility was kind of bruised. I said, "Who are you to take this unilateral decision? At your will, you ravage my mind and body, and at your will, you just decide unilaterally that from today we are no longer man and wife." I said, "I'm also an equal participant. I have a voice." So, like that, in every frame of Gandhi's life, wherever I felt that I could create that character and create a narrative and create a dialogue or create a, even just a soliloquy where she's talking to herself. And that happens often because she goes through this really punishing time or torment when there is this conflict between Harilal, that is Gandhiji's son, and him. So there is no greater pain or torture for a mother than to see her child go to sea. So often I have created a script or like a dialogue or even like a dream where she's saying to herself that the most unfortunate thing that could have happened to these four children is they were born as your sons. Maybe they would have been better off if they were somebody else's children because you would have been kinder to them. So that is exactly how I've panned out the script in life. You can't call it fiction entirely, and can't call it we can't call it
Non-fiction,
non-fiction.
yeah.
But so there's a very interesting new term which they give to this. It's called biofiction.
Right.
So till I can come up with a better word, let's
Yeah.
use biofiction.
So, you mentioned your writing is provocative, and also you want to show this different side of a publicly known narrative. And I feel like you've done that with all of your three books, be it, the life of your father, the duplicity in the Marwari community, and with Kasturba, there seems to be an infatuation with uncovering the truth, sort of debunking popular beliefs of people. So that deliberate for all of the other ones as well? And what was your motivation?
I think you've nailed it pretty much, Sid. It wasn't deliberate, but I think I have this. I'm an inborn rebel. Yes, I like to demolish established traditions, and all my life I have broken rules, no matter how trivial or no matter how big. That is part of me. I cannot take with persuasion. I can do anything. Try to force me to do it, I will revolt. So I think that pretty much reflects in my thought process and writing. And I don't like writing, even the characters I choose, obviously, they're alternate characters. I like writing about people who nobody else has written about. I like writing about women particularly. I broke the omerta, so to speak, writing about the Marwari family.
Yeah.
And a very prominent friend of mine who's an established Marwari lady. She asked me, she said, "ये तुमने लिखा क्यों ये तुमने?" I said, it's the Marwari story. She said, "हाँ, we all know this, but where was the need to write it?" I said, "Well, clearly I had a need which was much stronger than yours to keep it down.
Yeah.
So therefore I just wrote it." So yes, there is a need in me to uncover stories, to do things which are controversial, if you want to say the word, or to look at a narrative from the point of view that no one else has. To look at, for instance, to the story of Gandhi, not Gandhi the Mahatma, but Mohandas the husband, or not R.K. Dalmia, the great philanthropist and the pioneer industrialist and the owner of Times of India, and this great freedom fighter and the great creator of wealth, the third richest in the country. No, R.K. Dalmia as my father and R.K. Dalmia as the husband of my tormented mother.
So trying to find the ordinary in the extraordinary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I must tell you this, that dealing with ordinariness in extraordinary people is perhaps the most difficult thing to do.
I think people have a perception of these personalities, and sort of finding these very human follies in them, it's jarring.
It is.
And to be able to get that out there, I think it moves people in a way that maybe just the extraordinariness doesn't.
No, it also makes them angry. It also makes them like really like fuming. How dare you? Very often I get that. How dare you?
So how do you deal with that criticism?
Oh, I love it. It's my fuel. The more I get it, the more I'm driven to do it. I told you. I'm the original rebel iconoclast, if I can call myself that.
So what would you say is the genre of your novels? Because it's not all fiction, it's not all biography.
Yeah.
It's not
Well, I
mystery.
can no. Yeah, that's a nice word. Mystery is a nice word. No, like my father's biography is a biography. There's everything
Yeah.
there, which I record as the truth as I saw it, and it happened with me. Uh, Merchants of Death is a chronicle on the life of Marwaris. The characters are fictional because I didn't want to write a documentary on the Marwaris. I wanted to write a personalized, very subjective view of the Marwaris as I saw them, as a race that had the audacity or uh, the gall to shun my mother. So obviously there was an element of, if you want to call it revenge there, that yes, I wanted to explode and exploit and uncover this duplicity that on the face of it we are a very pious race, and we've made all the temples in India, and we everything for us is religion first and morality first, but then that ethic, what happens underneath? So I feel that if I were to preach to the Marwaris, I'd say then have the guts to come out and live the life that you want to live. Why should there be
A veil of
a secrecy? And why should there be something that you're embarrassed about? Either don't do it, or if you want to do it, then do it with aplomb, which is like my father did.
yeah.
that he had 6 wives, he just married every woman he liked. So do it like that, or don't do it at all. And then don't claim to be the pillars of ethics and morality and whatever. I don't hate Marwadis, I love them. And if I were to be born again, I would choose to be a Marwadi again. Yes.
So, with Father Dearest and also Merchants of Death, clearly you've drawn a lot from your own experiences as the daughter of Ashkidani and as a part of this larger Marwari community. So, how have your circumstances, and I guess with Kasturba, your country in its historic, political, cultural, social sense, how have all these factors sort of anchored you and shaped you as a person, but also as a writer?
No, I don't think. I think it's the other way around. The factors haven't anchored me as a writer. I think I've anchored the factors by my writing. I sound very pompous and very bombastic, but I'm sorry, that's what I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't even apologize for it. That's who I am, Sim, you know that. And no, I feel that it was ingrained in me right from a child that I don't follow the rules. I don't. And it's nothing that it was political or it was historic. I hate politics and I hate history. But I'm just a people watcher. I love people. And because I did psychology and personality was my speciality, I wanted to do a course in clinical psychology, which I couldn't. Uh, I think what really hooks me is people, and not saintly people. I don't like them. There have to be some vices in them for me to get like drawn to them. I don't like writing about hagiographies, for instance. It has to be something alternate. It has to resonate with that other side of me, that little hidden demon that once in a while I let out and then take it right back. That's why. Yeah. No, it's the other way around. Yeah.
Have there been challenges because of this? Because a lot of times as writers, you want to write to appease to a certain audience, but you were clearly not doing that at all.
No.
In fact, the people you're writing about are the people who really don't enjoy
If
what you
appease,
write.
I don't know that word. I was doing it to provoke. But no, that's just a rhetoric. But yes, not appease, but to express whatever I felt. And I have never, ever felt the need to, what is the word should I use? Tone it down. That's not, I cannot do it. Some people have said your writing is very strident and it's very visceral and it's very brutalizing and the rest of it, which brutalizing I get a lot. But I don't make a pretense. I cannot be this sugary sweet honey pot. That's not me. I would be revolted if I had to turn into that.
Yeah. So, in terms of the challenges that you faced, were the things that pained you in your research process when you learned about them, or even practical, logistical issues that came up? For instance, with Kasturba, there's not much written about her. What was that research? What did you read to know about her?
I had to do a lot of work. Kasturba was my most challenging book. It took me more than 7 years to complete it, and I gave it up. Like after having written for about 2, 3 years, midway I gave it up because I just felt that I will not be able to complete this book. I just felt like totally choked up from inside, and I said this book will not see the light of day. But like I said, Kasturba chose me, and I knew that it would happen. And I thought that even when I'm not writing, some kind of processing is happening in my head, and if it has to be, Kasturba will take shape. So yes, it was challenging. There was nothing on Kasturba. I had to pull all my resources, um, all my as a student of psychology, whatever little I could find. My focus was on that mother-child relationship. I wanted to bring out the pain of Harilal. I wanted to bring out the pain of the mother. And even more so because my own life resonated with the life of Gandhiji, Kasturba, and the children. Because often, and some of the sequences that I've written in this book, I actually wept when I wrote them. So that was like, like how if you go to a therapist and they make you regress into yourself. And sometimes the things that you throw up the things, the churning that happens. You go deep into your subconscious and you bring up stuff, and then you're afraid to face it. Sometimes you repress bad memories inside you, sometimes you internalize pain. And this was actually reliving some of the things that I perhaps had internalized. Like, like Harilal's pain was pretty much like the pain all of us siblings must have felt. And pain inflicted on us by inadvertently by a depressive uh, mother and also by an oppressive father. So that, then my mother's pain, which I wrote through Kasturba. So it was easy for me to get into the characters. And undeniably, it was liberating for me to having written about them and just exercise them from inside me.
Yeah.
So it was like writing a parallel story of my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in fact, the most interesting part of this is that, I have a habit that whenever I write a piece, I always read it out to my children because I feel that my voice, if I'm able to hook the voice of that, the young, like
Yeah.
20 plus, and my children are both now in their 30s. My son, when he read a couple of my, or listened to, I will read it out, a couple of my excerpts from there, and he said, Mom, you could well have named this book Mother Dearest.
Okay.
So, like Father Dearest
Yeah.
was about your dad, and this is pretty
About
much like your
dog.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've also mentioned that you feel that your father's role in the Indian freedom struggle in the establishment of industry in India has gone largely unacknowledged, and through your book you've at least tried to voice some of those, give voice to some of those contributions. In that light, how do you think art, literature, sort of play a role in preserving the stories of our past and our histories, and potentially not even in the way that we know them, but as you said, the other side
The
of
other
things.
side. Yeah, unfortunately, history is always written by the winners. So the narrative can be totally skewed and totally distorted. And I feel a great injustice was done to my father because I know that my father, because he was so close to Jinnah, and Jinnah, he kind of had an influence and a hold over Jinnah. I don't know if you know this, but when Jinnah left India after
He
the
left
partition, he
his house
sold
for
his
you.
house to
Yeah.
my father. And ironically enough, that was the house where I don't know how many animals must have been slaughtered because it was his home. And my father established his anti cow slaughter movement office the day Jinnah left there.
Oh, wow.
So, despite the fact that they had such anti polar beliefs, like my father was a staunch practicing Hindu, and Jinnah was at least wanted to be known as a staunch Muslim. Uh, I feel that had my father not been sidelined by the people in power at that time, and particularly Nehru, I know, because Nehru despised my father, absolutely hated him, and eventually he brought him to his ruin. So, if he had not been marginalized, because my father had a close relationship with Gandhi, with Sardar Patel, with all the leaders at that time, he should have been a part of that process. But for vested interests and for, well, I guess say destiny, he was just totally marginalized. So, in that, I feel that I have done a little bit of a service to him by resurrecting his role, which could have or should have been at the time of the freedom movement and the struggle, because he funded the Congress immensely, and he was deeply one of the pillars of the freedom movement at that time, because he was the one with the funds who could fund them and the wealth to be able to support them. And unfortunately, he was just exploited by the Congress Party, each one of them. So in that, I have an angst, and I have tried to bring it to light. And I think my book will go down for in history as one of the other stories which were not told. But as far as industry and his role in development or trade and industry in India, I think that is pretty much alive. Because my father's name as a founder of the Danya Empire and all his descendants, direct and the ones through his brother and the others, they're all in positions of importance. The industries are still there. And I can say that I'm proud of belonging to that flagship name.
Yeah. So, what do you think the role of women writers is then to, sort of get these stories out there?
I don't think it's any different from men writers. I mean, why should you tag them as women writers? We're all writers. I told you before, I'm not
Yeah.
a feminist and I don't want to be tagged as one. I'm happy. Women writers or any other writer, child writer, filmmaker, biographer, call it by any other name. We all owe a debt of gratitude to who and why we are where we are. So if we have been given the gift or the privilege or the chance to express ourselves through our writings, of course we have a role to play. And of course, writings influence. Now there's a new term, influencers, which I would love to be an influencer. My daughter-in-law is an influencer, and she gets paid like serious money to just hold a product in her hand
And you get freebies too.
and freebies, of course. So I want to be an influencer to hold my books in my hands and say, "Okay, now read those and follow what I did."
Yeah.
But of course, that's on a lighter side. Yes, I feel that we are all influencers in our field, and yes, we have a responsibility. And the more I write, the more I feel, and certainly my writings, even though they're alternate, and even though they're controversial, I still feel that I have contributed to that awareness that we all need to be.
You talked about, harboring this slight sense of, vengeance because of the injustice done to your father. Do you think Kasturba has sort of allowed you to give voice to that sort of aggression against Gandhi ji? Gandhi ji?
Yes, actually, now that you say it, maybe deep down inside, subconsciously, it is that little bit of angst. Because I say this again, and I don't mean it in any other way, is that I deeply respect Gandhiji as a freedom fighter, as the scholar, as a yogi, as a philosopher, as a social reformer. But my mind revolts. I cannot accept him as Mahatma. I cannot. And I have the same feeling towards my father that I deeply respect his achievements in every other field. But I have a deniance against him as my father and as the husband of my mother. Yeah.
So you're all set to finish your newest novel. Are you allowed to give us a little
Oh, yeah,
sneak
sure.
peek into what
So
that's all
this
about?
again, it's a bit surreal in the sense that I dreamt about this subject.
Okay.
So I was like free floating after Kasturba I want to write. Although when writing Kasturba, I remember telling myself that this is my swan song. I'm not going to be writing again. But your writing is your fix. It's so heady. And of course, all the adulation and all the name and fame and everything that you get. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here with you if it hadn't been for my writing. So when that thirst again came up in me and I was searching for something to write, I knew it would have to be a woman. I knew it would have to be a deeply colorful, a very controversial character. And I literally dreamt of Radha.
Okay.
And when I say this, I don't mean to sensationalize it, but actually, Radha wants me to write her story.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll think I'm cuckoo, but it's the truth. And I haven't told this to anybody yet, but except of course my family. But I was in Ranchi a couple of years ago for one of my book talks and promos, and I met a psychic there. So he was, I didn't know he was a psychic. He's an IAS officer. He was sitting in the audience and listening to what I was saying. And after I finished talking, and he asked me, and I hadn't mentioned Radha or anything because I didn't know them. So he said to me that no, as a matter of fact, this character of Radha was kind of playing in my mind. And I said, I want to write about Radha, but I don't know where to begin. So then he said to me, is that, Radha will speak to you. He said, just concentrate on the character. You will become Radha, and Radha will speak to you. And then he said to me something very strange. And it's a bit romanticized, it's a bit sensational, it's a bit like quirky, as he said that in your last life, you had a mission which was not complete. So you have come back onto this planet to complete that mission. So I said, are you trying to tell me that I have been brought back into the planet to write about Radha? He said, I don't know, you'll find the answers to that. And that left me feeling very like disturbed, not disturbed in a negative way, but stirred is the word. And I forgot about it. And then after about 2, 3 months, I dreamt of Radha. It was literally, it was a nice, very happy, vivid dream, and that's when I said, I spoke to my publisher, and of course, they grabbed it.
Yeah.
Said, you cannot go anywhere else. And
Yeah.
so I signed the contract, and there I was. So hopefully, if Radha permits, I will finish soon
Yeah.
in the next 2 months.
Perfect. And your mother used to write a lot
A
about
lot
Krishna.
about Radha, Krishna, Meera.
Meera.
So she was in many ways the embodiment of Radha. And filmy as it sounds, but while I write Radha, I actually feel like I'm being Radha.
Yeah.
So I'm having a lot of fun.
I think this is a very old Grecian concept. A spirit enters the artist, and that's when they produce their best stuff. And at least in the earlier times, that's how a lot of writers used to cope with this. Have this huge success. I've created this amazing piece of work. Whether that will happen again or not, I don't know, because something entered me and made me do this.
This is absolutely true, because in each one of my books, whenever I've written, or even other stuff that I write, sometimes I write random poetry and stuff. So when I read my own writing and I distance myself from it, it's almost like I'm writing in a trance. And I read it and I say, but who wrote that? Those are not my words. And sometimes it's something like I've written about places I've never been to. So I tell myself maybe it's my astral body that has traveled to those places, or I've been in it in another life, or I'm just imagining things and it's a coincidence that it happens to be so close to the actual place or the actual happening. But the more I write, the more I'm convinced that yes, I do channel another energy which writes for me. And I will narrate to you an incident which happened with me when I wrote Merchants of Death. I sent it to my editor who had done Father Dearest. She was no longer working with the publishing house. And I just sent it to her. I said, have a look at this manuscript. I'm sending it in for publishing. And she read and she said that you, as usual, your book kept me up 3 nights. So you owe me 3 more nights after Father Dearest. And she said, yeah, and the last scene that you wrote was so Christopher Marlowe and so Dr. Faustus, and that scene where he's waiting for the devil. He's locked himself up in this room, and the devil is knocking on his door. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, Christopher Marlowe, Dr. Faustus, you've read it. I said, I've never read it. I don't know what you're talking about. She said, open that book, get it for you, read it. And I never did English honors as in my graduation. So straight away from Senior Cambridge English, I went on to do, after doing a terribly boring course in home science, I went on to do MA in psychology. So I had a huge gap in my knowledge of classic literature. Dr. Faustus I hadn't read. So when she said that to me, the first thing that struck me is that obviously I have read Dr. Faustus in some other lifetime. Or it is a part of my accumulated past where I have either, I don't know, I channel words and ideas and situations and places as if they're happening with me then. So I am absolutely convinced that I can take no credit for my writing. It is another alien energy that I do channel, and that writes for me.
Wow. Spooky almost.
Spooky, surreal, alternate.
Yeah. And
quirky.
you mentioned that you want to also write a book where death is the
Main thing.
narrator.
And
Yeah.
and in all my books, like I've written about me in Father Dearest as a fetus inside my mother's womb. Now, to me, I have actually traveled into that womb. I have felt trapped inside those walls. I was a child that was born 11 months after my mother kept me in her womb instead of 9 months like most children are born. And I don't know, I tell myself that I didn't want to be born. I stayed in there longer. Either I was having too much fun inside her womb, or I was just a reluctant birth. I didn't want to come on to earth. So I have actually traveled inside that womb, and I have felt what I have written there, these dark spaces, this innate claustrophobia that I have. I don't like dark spaces. I don't like to be hemmed in. I start feeling very uncomfortable. So, coming back to what you said, I don't write as Neil Madhav. I write as somebody else.
Do you have any last message for young writers um, young people?
Well, young people, I would say, is identify your ambition. Uh, don't have any fears. Just go forth and do what your soul tells you. Your soul is your guide, and your soul is your higher voice. And for writers, I would again say, don't be afraid. Say what you want to. Never neglect the writer in you. We all have writers in ourselves. And if you have a story inside, share it because the world is waiting for you to hear it.
That's lovely. No, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This is a delightful interview.
It's been very inspiring for me too, as a writer, and the fearlessness aspect of it is something that I want to try to like inculcate a little bit more, because I'm still, my mother's gonna be my first reader. I don't want to write something that she's not gonna write. So